All right, guys, I'm going to walk you through how to do a few simple proofs. So this first one is asking us to prove triangle ABD and CBD are congruent. And it's really a good idea whenever we start off with a proof to kind of figure out where we're going, what information we have, and make sure that we have our triangles labeled correctly. So we go ABD, so I start at A, I go up to B, and I come down to D. That's our first triangle. Our second triangle is CBD, so I start at C over here, I go up to B, and I come down to D. Okay, so those are the two triangles I'm aiming to prove that are congruent. So remember, guys, when we are proving triangles congruent, we need 3 pieces in order to prove that they're congruent. We have 5 ways that we know to prove triangles are congruent. We have side, 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 angle, side, so the angle's in between, angle, side, angle, so the side is in between, angle, angle, side, so the side is not in between, and then we have HL. All of those need 3 parts, including HL, which needs the hypotenuse, the leg, and the fact that it's a right triangle. All right, so we are going to start with what we know. And the first thing that we know is given information. So I'm going to start with writing the very first given statement, which is that AB and BC are congruent. AB is congruent to BC. Remember, statements are what I know, and then reasons are how do I know it's true. So the reason I know this is true is because it was given to me. Once I write it on my proof, I need to mark it on my picture. That's a really important step, guys. If we don't do that, then sometimes we will lose kind of what our proof is kind of going for. So marking it on the picture helps us to see the overall idea of the picture of the proof. So AB is congruent to BC. Okay, so I see that I have 2 sides right now. That means I'm either going side, angle, side, angle, side, angle, or side, 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 or angle, angle, side. In fact, almost all of our options are still here. The next thing that I see in my given information is that D is the midpoint. So D is the midpoint, I would write as step 2. D is the midpoint of AC. Again, it's a specific piece of information. How do I know that? I know that because it's given. Okay, now that I know that, I'm just going to mark that D is the midpoint because that's all it's told me. I'm marking D. It has not told me anything is congruent, but I have recorded it in my proof. Now, the fact that D is the midpoint tells me that AD and DC are congruent. So I'm going to say that specific piece of information, that AD is congruent to DC. Okay, well, how do I know that? The reason I know that is because of this piece right here. D is the midpoint. So if a point is a midpoint, it divides the segment into 2 congruent segments. Okay, now this is a generic piece of information over here. I could change the letters A, D, and D and C, and this would still make sense as long as it was correct and accurate. So I'm going to mark that on my picture because I said that it was true. Now I have 2 sides. So now I'm down to basically like side, angle, side, HL, or side, side, side. I'm out of given information. So what am I going to do? I'm also out of room. Let's see if I can squeeze a few more in this way. So what am I going to do? I'm out of the information. I don't have anything else. I've got to look at my picture, and there's one more thing that I know based on looking at this picture. I know that BD is congruent to itself. I know that BD is congruent to BD. Well, how is that true? Well, that's true because of the reflexive property. So this is the reflexive property of segments, or just reflexive property. Okay, so now that I've got that information, I have 3 sides. Do you see that? In my proof, if I go back and look in my proof, I've got a side here, I've got a side here, and I've got a side here. I've got 3 congruency statements. All 3 of those are sides. So I know that my reason at the very end here for number 5 is going to be side, side, side. And I found that in steps 1, in step 3, and in step 4. Those are the step numbers. On number 5, well, what does that mean? That actually means this very last statement, and that's what I always write. That is the last thing I always write, that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CBD. And there I'm done with my proof.